go. Thank you for having me today. I have a few questions about the PR industry in Vietnam, and I know that you're very experienced professional in the industry, that you've been here quite a long time. So I just want to ask, do you know when public relations first came to Vietnam? Yeah.
It's really hard to answer. In fact, I don't even know how I would answer that. There were local PR firms here long before my time. When I was based in Singapore for 2 years before my time, so now we're over 9 years ago, we had a well-established partner here. So I actually don't even know how to answer that. I mean, when you Google Vietnam public relations, you find lots of stuff about the war in the 1970s. It's very, very hard then to say when did PR start anywhere. When people measure the history of PR, they tend to look at a few key dates at the beginning of the century when people first started to look at publicity, middle of the last century.
Thank you for having me today. I have a few questions about the PR industry in Vietnam, and I know that you're very experienced professional in the industry, that you've been here quite a long time. So I just want to ask, do you know when public relations first came to Vietnam?
With some other partners. Yeah. About 8 years. It's really hard to answer. In fact, I don't even know how old. It's very hard to say when did. There were local PR firms here long before my time.
You founded a PR firm in Vietnam, the first PR firm in Vietnam.
I founded the first international joint venture. I actually don't know how to answer that for an investor. When you Google Vietnam public relations, you find
before that,
lots of
you
stuff
had
about
to
the
do
war in
any
1970s.
research about the industry.
It's very, very hard then to say when did PR start. To be honest, I was hired to come in as the general manager. When people measure the history of PR, they tend to look at a few key dates at that beginning of the century. My own research was a little different the last century when I was an account director in a couple of and people who still have agencies to this day really found. And when I first heard of the job of research and run that when that was fully important to Vietnam, I looked back over all my old emails and I counted the number of times I was asked for a referral to an agency, first international joint venture. And we had an affiliate that we were less than happy with, but we didn't 8 years ago. So now I figured if I was an account director in Singapore, but every other account director in Singapore probably received the same number of inquiries. I think it was like 12 or 13 in a year. So that basically meant once a month somebody asked me about Vietnam.
You founded
I figured if every account director in Singapore was receiving one inquiry per month about Vietnam, international joint venture in Vietnam. So this is the first one I had a foreign investment partner.
Okay. So before that, you had to do any research about the industry.
My own market research was actually confined to be honest, I was hired to come in as a general manager, so most of this to me means that there is opportunity in the market at that firm before I was hired, and that could only get better. My own future research was a little different and so forth. I was an account director in Singapore, it was 8.5 and working for a regional PR firm. And when I first heard
how
of
do you define a PR firm? To your definition, what it means?
I looked back over all my old emails. It's really, really hard to count the number of times I was asked really hard to define to an agency. I tend when people ask me that, we had an affiliate that we defined as happy with, but we didn't own any event company. Now I figured if I was an account director in Singapore, girls in bars, and every other account director in Singapore probably received the same number of inquiries, it was like 12 or 13 in a girls in bars. So that basically meant once a month somebody asked me how to get an answer. I figured if every account director in Singapore, honest, and I said received one inquiry per month about Vietnam, that's a lot of interest in Vietnam. Business model continues to get closer to being a discipline of management and a discipline of marketing. That was my take on it, and I thought, okay, well, that means there's opportunity in Vietnam. So my own market research was actually confined to my own inbox when I looked back and said, this to me means actually this is opportunity in the market. Very involved now, and that could only get better research. And from there, I started researching the market and so forth.
Okay. And that was 8 years ago, right?
Heavily 8.5 years ago.
That's a lot.
Strategies, and I've just come off
so how do you define a PR firm?
what's
to your
our overarching
definition?
strategy, what's the tactics we're going to do with it every month. It's really, really hard to answer that in any market. It's really hard to define what you do. I tend when people ask me that to define it by what I don't get wrong, and there's been an event come reasonably high profile. I'm not someone who puts PR girls in bars in short skirts and make them fill up your bottle. Whereas increasingly people thinking, yeah, I'm social media. I remember sitting in a conference with an addict, one of my old bosses, with my old boss from Australia 8 years ago. To be honest, I said back at a panel at MIT, social media web 2.0. I think that you don't really use that word, it continues to get closer to he was saying at the time, was that was a thing very different to what ad agencies do. And it seems to be as to why the comparison social media naturally made was because PR as a discipline has, in terms of what we actually do, we are always very involved in not one social responsibility. Phrase that for Vietnam. Advertisers, if you boil it down, their media relations strategies, and they just come off. There's complicated sides to the development, what that's going to be. It's complicated 6 months to work with what's our overarching strategy. By the space, we're going to deliver every month. What do more? PR people have never had that luxury. PR are used to journalists arguing with them, questioning them when things go wrong. And social media in its own way is a big influence go wrong. And there's been a couple who is very high profile who have the ability to argue back with you, exactly as reporters have done to us on the phone for 50 years. Where increasingly have the ability to cross-check things. And I remember sitting in those reference things to see whether this makes sense. So we tend to be very in Australia many years ago. We say social media strategies because PR is all social media web conversations. It's never been about announcements. We don't really hear that word anymore. But what he was saying at the time,
what are the leading PR firms in Vietnam right now?
A thing that PR should own. And he's not even got some international moment. There are a different RMIT student has asked me about this via email maybe 2 or 3 always been, and really in terms of the international PR firms, advertisers, if you boil to my count, this is approximate, by 5 international PR firms. By that I define as have development with the creators and non-Vietnamese. Essentially, you buy the space. Another one that is probably, I guess, the largest, or never the largest of them. PR people used to journalists arguing with us, questioning them, and process of being social media in its own way is a big involvement of people, and then who don't want to. There have the ability to handle exactly. There are quite a few done to us on the very large Vietnamese PR firms. So then, if you want to define, have the ability to cross-check things, to headcount reference things, and to see where's going to be one of the Vietnamese PR firms. So we tend to be very involved if you want to define the social media strategies, because PR is always attempting to have conversation. It's never develop a summit. There would be, develop a summit in a community. There's one international investor PR firm.
What are the leading PR firms in Vietnam right now?
Define it on the same line. Being out. We've got some momentum at the moment. There are a different RMIT student, more than anyone else, asked me about this define by email, attempting to outreach to and really in terms of the international PR firms.
Leading firms are different or similar to
popular firms? About 5 international PR firms.
Popular
firms.
Define
as having
different
and non-Vietnamese shareholder. There is another one that is probably the largest or among the largest. The best example here is that Apple's Vietnamese PR firm. You could make a very good case that Apple is the leading transition firm at the moment on it. And then, but it sells less boxes than Dell. In fact, there are quite a few that would make very large Vietnamese PR firms. So then if you want to define leading by headcount, it's always going to be one of the Vietnamese PR firms, being the company that's, if you want to shape the future of technology, by Apple launch, attempting to, in my old job in Singapore, I launched something that would be, users of a community, there's one international investor PR firm that's that big, but if you want to define it a year and a half ago and so being out is maybe at those conferences. That's the difference between a leader and one who does that. And if you want to define it, we'll never compete in box shit attempting to outreach to key communities. I'd like to put my own.
Okay. Leading firms are different or similar to public firms. So in the case of PR industry in Vietnam, what do you think that the PR firms in Vietnam are fighting for the market?
Best example is, I understand what you're saying. You could make a very good case. I kind of detached myself from what you first in the industry, to be honest. You know, you mentioned so handful of big local firms. To be honest, I've never met anybody from any of those firms ever, other than at a conference a year and a half ago that was being chaired by one of the other firms, and that person is the future of technology at firm. Apple launched, you know, I mean, in my honest belief, I launched tablets 9 years ago. Anything I say is just Apple imagined thick, but I think Apple launched a tablet a year and a half ago, fighting very hard for ways for maybe tablets, and that's fighting very hard for leader and international accounts. To be honest, I've always defined my firm differently. Box shipment clients have typically been international PR firms, regional PR firms that don't have offices, especially in other. I've always targeted those guys as my first line of
clients. In the case of PR industry in Vietnam, what do you think that the PR firms in Vietnam are fighting for the market? Do you understand my question?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I've attached myself to people who are the industry. So, you know, office source firms, you know, you mentioned a handful of big local firms. To be honest, it just seems to be why we've always. I've never met anybody from any of those firms. Maybe it's because we're attracting international. Other than at a conference a year and a half ago, maybe it's because that was being chaired by one of the other firms, and that person communications person heading that firm based in Singapore or Hong Kong. I've honestly never come across them. So it comes up with the PR discipline. Anything I say is just a jerk who often imagine he doesn't. You know, I think you will find that those situations recently fighting very hard for we found the international brand and fighting very hard for just the international accounts that PR starts and stops. To be honest, I've always defined my firm and everything else should be advertising clients. And typically that's the case. They're international PR firms, regional PR firms that don't have offices in Vietnam. We've always kind of those guys as my first young industries.
And
that's because of what I said in my first.
Do you think that other international firms also do the same thing like Matterhorn Communications?
I always wanted to got a really good compliment once to Matt. The second one, the way party was had a people, one of those friends, no office or small office in Vietnam before. And I met a girl who was founded in a different PR. Just seemed to be one, and they were just setting up and they were doing their business plan. Maybe it's because we're attracting you said, write your business plan and make you a stronger. Maybe it's because the clients are a great content to be received. Have someone else coming in, entering and based in that's the guy we have to be. A great season, a great professional confident who comes up with the PR discipline rather than a local marketing manager. I know that firm has tried to, win allegiance. We came across a situation recently where alliances with an international brand a marketing manager locally who just had the PR releases, starts and stops in cases. Everything else. However, I think that's okay. They probably still claim to be the first choice of quite a few of the global PR. We've always kind of avoided that mentality, and that's because it's a young industry for strategy.
So, do you think the reason why you do that? Do you think that other international firms also do the same thing, like other global PR firms come in and ask for your help? Is that because that you have less advantages?
I was at a going away party for one of my best friends
compared to other local PR firms in Vietnam.
And I met a girl who was founding a different PR firm. I think that there is just setting up, and probably boils down to the professional network. She said that we with our business plan, we make you a number one market professional network, and strong. That's really cool. That's a great compliment to receive. To have someone else coming in, entering the market and saying, "That's the guy we have to be." Country manager comes out of a great professional compliment. His or her network is far bigger. I know that firm has tried to win allegiance basis from. Then that's where it's with. In my case, I've targeted the network firm I have the strongest and has had been over the years successful. That's very case relatively focused. However, I think.
So I'd like to come back to the question a little bit. So, what are the disadvantages that international firms could have compared to local PR firms in Vietnam?
That's been a deliberate strategy. I don't know that.
Do you think the reason why you do that, having international, global, other global PR firms come in and ask for your help? Is that because that you have less advantages,
that you have a good, strong, solid team
compared to other local PR firms in Vietnam? that you have to compete that way?
Contacts and so forth. I think that the reason for that, the ownership structure of professional networks of the people, whether or not it's 100% Vietnamese owned or joint professional networks and foreign strongest among sort of that kind of community, other PR firms.
It's just the different directions that each firm wants to take, right?
I think if your country manager comes out of the background where he's
what do you think about the demand for PR services in Vietnam?
And that's where his client base or her client base has come from.
Right.
When I came to Vietnam, that's where PR, in my case, I basically an advertising strongest, and it has proved to be a case of a pretty good network to be. The ad agencies would have a PR.
So I'd like to come back to your question a little bit. So what are the disadvantages that international firms could have compared to local PR firms?
They would sell PR. As an ad, say to an ad purchase, it's like assuming that you think of one company that tries to be all expat. I have heard recently that has been developing challenging for who uses a media buying house, and that buying house. But assuming that and good get from the outside of the team of people with a good strong network, in media, I find it interesting on times and so forth, who they can tell for you if the price ownership structure of a firm. I don't know whether or not it's 100% Vietnamese or a joint venture or 100% foreign. So what's that point?
It's just a different direction
that was the base
each firm wants to take.
Sort of came in.
Okay.
It's certainly
what do you think about the demand for PR services in Vietnam?
Because it will be generating. When I came to this last year, when the first graduating profitable students came out, so basically it is graduating. Students be a case of training to an international standard. At agencies, very few of us would have a PR DSCs or can receive the education, probably an account manager in the field that you're so well. And that will, over time, raise the standard for the whole industry. They can sell because you guys will graduate, say, I'm going to have no ideas, here's our creative, here's our media, a reasonable new field, like a press start to help shape that. I have to recently better educate of probably develop an increased standards uses a media buying house, and that buying baseline I found like that, and you get very count. I wish them well with that. I carry no ill will, but I find it interesting.
So I don't see a lot of global PR firms in Vietnam. I know that APCO is PR firm in DC. But APCO, maybe I don't know much about the industry, but I don't see any global PR
given
firms
that was the base I found 7.5 years ago.
Established themselves in Vietnam.
The global firms which come inevitably. Your own university, RMIT will play a big role in that in the future. Basically, because it will be generated. Vietnam is seen to, I guess, last year when the first graduated, enough of revenues to justify the cost base. It is graduating. Students that have a higher cost trained to international standard. Before, there were very few of us, only the people who studied overseas. When you see that Vietnam's potential billings, make that way over time to raise the standard for the whole industry. It has to, because you guys will graduate.
So do you have any prediction that
into
probably when
a reasonable new field? I think you'll see there is, and that's going to make for a better educated PR workforce. You will see, I'd say, maybe in based on next year or the year that it can only grow and it is growing.
Okay.
And probably 2 to 3 years.
So
out,
I don't see a lot of global PR firms in Vietnam. I know that APCO is PR firm in DC, but APCO maybe I don't know much about the industry, but I don't see any global PR firms that have established themselves in Vietnam.
So the global firms will come inevitably.
That means that the industry in Vietnam has a lot of potential.
Basically,
that,
Vietnam seem to offer. You have to ask where does growth come from? It either comes from owning new clients. Now, when a market like say you have very few clients around here, it comes from questionable.
Sure.
And when they say that there's old clients changing shops, potential billings make from potentially profitable offers, increased business from existing clients. So that means that
so do you have any prediction
finds a new project?
Probably when.
So that's the two. I think you will see next source that there is firms will look at is now entry to new territories. And we'll see, I'd say, new profits. Maybe in the assumption next year is that there is enough profit to justify and does Vietnam have that? Probably 2 to 3 years in Vietnam there right now. Probably it's getting 3 or 4 of say the world's largest 15 or 20 PR firms with an office here of some sort.
In terms of the industry, what are the potentials that you may think of? You know, in terms of talent, in terms of that perception of the industry in Vietnam has a lot of potential. What other things can you?
It does. Well, you have to ask where does growth at RMIT. It either comes from winning new clients. When a market like Singapore, there are just very few new clients around. How many comes from
30?
Or there's a lot of clients changing shop 5 graduated, was it?
Yeah.
Or it comes from the class behind you, increased business from existing clients. In the end, RMIT is that your existing retirement finds a new project spitting out. Okay. So that's the top qualified graduates to work in PR. Next, with the exception of those that firms that is. So that would be the talent and they become a source of. And again, I'll go back in history. The assumption that in the process is that 7.5 years there is enough profit to justify the highest people who have just get on that potential, a whole lot of fuel and an attitude. If you get on there, that was right now, it's getting hiring.
Okay.
And
so,
for that reason, I first hired a journalist because she had writing skills and media contact list that I needed.
In terms of the industry, what are the potentials that you may think of? You know, in terms of talent, in terms of
events and ceremonies. For a global technology company,
perception of public relations been changing.
They both had a whole. The first one didn't have the logistics skills, so it was kind of responsibility to help with that. And the second, I said, RMIT, it was my responsibility to help with that. And then the third was development for the Vietnamese talent. Crossed over our skills, and you have any students in your foundation team.
30.
Okay. So that's changing 25. There will be a scenario where, let's say, class behind you, 7 years time more. In the end, RMIT is going to graduating classes last year, this year. So spitting out the top qualified, the oldest of those guys, with the exception of those who study for 7 years. So that professional experience. They will have worked with people. And again, I'll go back in history to prove the understanding there. So let's say 7.5 years ago, I communications manager, I've been working next to a marketing manager. The whole pushing fuel around her is what helped to educate that was my manager. These things spread laterally as well as for that reason, like first hired journalist, that would she had writing skills as well as that in contact that she knew us to be using in terms of PR that I hired the person who can handle the reputation for training sessions and I mentioned I did find myself surprised to hear because she had marketing logistics saying all you have to do is that. They both as a whole. The first one didn't have the logistics. I don't really think that helped with that. And the second one didn't have the media contact. I was more responsibility to help with that. And then the three was kind of crossed over skills and
pretty much when we talk about PR industry is mostly in Ho Chi Minh City.
That's changing,
right? Because
there will be a
the industry in Ho Chi Minh City is developing
7 years time.
I know it's my personal opinion, but
graduating classes
more developed than the.
It depends on what you want to do. We'll then have about 7 Hanoi can be a challenging place to professional experience. They will have worked with people around them. I've always found that to improve the understanding there. So let's say they we'll have an office up there, communications manager, they've been working next to a marketing manager, and to be honest, having their own opportunities will help to educate them taking managers. And these things spread laterally as well as vertically. And this is far away being a market. It's basically, and as well as that, it will help to measure it based on double the size of Hanoi in terms of just professional opinion and the reputation. So if you're talking about PR from a marketing way, I did find myself surprised to hear absolutely that a marketing person is just saying that we have to more people to buy laptops than there are there. I don't really think that however, last all that much longer, and I certainly see our public relations program involves outreach to key opinion leaders, government representatives.
Pretty much when we talk about PR industry, it's mostly
work to
in Ho Chi Minh City,
change opinion,
right? Because
policy, anything like that.
the industry in Ho Chi Minh City is developing.
That has to be in Hanoi.
I don't know, it's my personal opinion, but a bit
eventually
more developed than the.
It depends what you want to do. Flying up so much and have something on the ground. Hanoi can be a challenging place to go to, but I wouldn't discount Hanoi just because there's less people. I always discount it because I will have an office up there because there's a talent or a lack of understanding. There's just a different time. To be honest, having is asked to shape that office will take otherwise.
So, specifically, what types of services that a PR firm can
This
offer?
is far away being a market.
The market
is
in
basically in Hanoi. You can take a measure it. Basically, double the size of Hanoi in terms of just number of people, NGOs. So if you're talking about PR, that's really the opportunity. then actually, yes, there is still a market there. Absolutely. The second biggest market in Vietnam is there. Let's not forget it's the market. If you talk about selling laptops, it's the second most likely place to sell laptops. Your public relations program involves outreach to key people, so argues that there is government representatives in certain circles, which makes it a better market to help change opinion. A luxury specialist that pretend to be the city to be in. Certainly among special circles, there is a big luxury that we fly up and down a lot. That's one argument. Eventually, it just beeped, hopefully soon. We'll be able to 10 minutes it just beeped, flying up so much and have something on the ground to work on more locally.
So do you have any prediction or any trends that you can see in the industry in Vietnam?
Because there's a talent. Things I get asked about. I get asked about social media a lot. Is asked of you where does social media sit in Vietnam? That's challenging.
Specifically, what types of services that appeal from to the market in Hanoi?
Sometimes in Hanoi, very heavily being. I get asked about that. I get asked about corporate social responsibility, NGOs. That's very commanding opportunities. NGOs, people who partner with projects. Yes, there's still a market. Absolutely, the second biggest market in Vietnam is there. Community benefits and ways to talk about selling laptops. The companies say is most likely place. Those are the two things I'm just probably getting asked most about. Aside from the also argues that there is press conferencing happening certain expect to attend, which makes it a better market. That's luxury. The logistics are luxury, the specialities, stuff that's actually shaping the industry on special systems. There is will come back to luxury market, and so that's one argument that just peaked.
So. CSR is developing very fast in Vietnam.
It is because it's a developing market.
So do you have any prediction or any trends that you can see
publicity benefit of the way they invest their budget? Things I get asked about. I get asked about social media because over the years I've built a social media sits in the Vietnam. That's challenging very well. Looking for ways to, for example, best use that budget. People ask about, and that can become ways that you could get onto sometimes. Yes, that is definitely something. I get asked about that. I get asked about corporate social.
Okay, so do you think these trends in Vietnam are very similar or very different from the global trends?
Projects to do, things to undertake, and that's pretty similar. It's just that it's given that based on public sales and benefits to the company that people are looking to do. Those would be the projects two things social media is what's most about from a studies minorities and what sort of things that but some risk constraints of the market and expect to attend. I get asked a lot about how can we build something, the logistics of the constraints of the practicalities, stuff that's actually shaping the industry.
These trends,
about most will come back down to CSR.
What effects do they have in the industry? In short term and long term? CSR is developing very fast in Vietnam.
It is because it's a developing market.
So these trends are they going to be similar, like in the next 5 years or in the next 10 years?
Publicity benefit. No, I don't really see those changing. As well as that, and I guess it's good because over the years I've seen a relationship I don't think is epidemic. It'll probably get looking for ways to best use that budget for CSR. Start ways that that effective for me. Do it. Yes, things definitely something over a sustained period of time.
Okay, so do you think these trends in Vietnam are very similar or very different from the global trends that's going on right now?
Technology is pretty similar and the new uses of tech. It's just that given that we're use it to build something that's a market that people are looking for. Now, at the moment, it's projects on social media and so forth. From a Vietnamese phenomenon, whatever happens to come out, but some of the constraints of their market mean is something that I get asked a lot. Those things will come and go to fit the ways market. I saw a friend who has Facebook status and he logged into MySpace and
what effects do they have in the industry?
No one's updated it ever since and it's kind of sad. These things will come and go, explain that question. But in 5 years' time,
so these trends are they going to be similar like in the next 5 years or in the next 10 years?
No, I don't really see those changing.
So I think you and I will agree that the PR industry in Vietnam
is quite high. It'll probably get a new name. It gets a new name
countries, developed countries.
People stop calling it CSR. Start calling it something else.
In terms of histories and potentials and in terms of the scales of the industry and the number of firms.
Certainly in terms of the scale, social media fast may end up with a change in names. But is it behind technology and the new uses of technology? Not necessarily. Will always be sort of ahead of people. Insofar as at the moment it's about Facebook, Twitter, and so forth, understanding what Google Plus and whatever happens to come out as equivalents thereof. So far as those things, a lack of educated how they always have. But then there's also people here that have accepted Facebook mistakes like logged into MySpace and people's statuses were like Merry Christmas 2004. Those are the things that I've updated it ever since, and it's kind of sad. These things will come and go.
Talents and
but in 5 years' time, we'll still be talking about whatever the
so those are the two things that
of the day is, and how can
we have to change in order to catch up with the world. Is that what you're saying? Okay. So I think you and I
this
both
kind of
agree that
inside
the PR industry in Vietnam
is
who usually work
behind
the PR industry in other
women.
countries, developed countries. Okay.
In
terms of histories and potentials and, in terms of the scales of the industry and the number of firms.
Certainly in terms of the scale of the industry, it's a far smaller industry than in other markets. I don't know that there is it behind a core defining factor that makes someone a PR person necessarily. I mean, I certainly would call it ahead. I don't know so far as people I've met in my life. The level of media understanding, and I don't know that there's anything always happened in the process of education. In so far as there is a lack of education. My favourite PRs, I guess I can say. But then there's also people here that have accepted that when the market's scaled to work, you can really and to have a head that's and able to see make shit and catch up to science. Vietnam will catch up. I've got a friend who's developed
talents and perception of PR in
Vietnam. You photograph in the middle of
so those are the two things that
every 10 degrees and it photographs it from
we
the
have
same
to
angle.
change in order to
Exactly, from different angle at exactly the same time. So you can see the whole way around. And
this kind of an inside question. So, who usually work in
look at the issue and see all sides of it very quickly.
Okay.
Everywhere in the world it's a female-dominated field. You certainly have to be an athlete indicator. I remember talking to a student usually years ago who sort of said, I want to work in PR, but I don't know that there is a core defining factor challenging that makes someone a PR person that you can public but wish to avoid. I don't know how many PR people I've met in my life. Maybe she can find a niche for herself, and I don't know that there's anything all of us have in common about financial communicators. Pretty sure that nothing all of us have. Some people say you have to be able to write really well. My favourite PRs, I guess I want to say, a person who was really successful who says anytime someone asks to get a release, give it to someone else, and to have a head that's able to see. I don't think there's a defining characteristic that makes a good PR. I've got a friend who's developed some people camera system out of journalism. You photograph journalism with a camera, 36 cameras every 10 degrees, and I photograph it from the same angle. It's actually, from a different angle at exactly the same time. So you can see the whole way. I don't feel like I've really answered your question, but I don't feel like there actually is a best PR so people without success. Look at the issue and see all sides very quickly.
How about the income that the PR industry generates from the services that they offer to the clients? Is that a very good income right now? Is it going to change in the future?
No, it'll change. It'll go up over the years as marketing goes in for a challenging career and as relating to publics that wish to avoid firms, professional services are becoming more valuable to publics. I do talk to a lot of people, and you can find a lot of markets who say the opposite. That's going to be challenging most of because at the moment there are so many people who are trying to say the same thing that they end up. Some people say you have to be advertising the price for any that says I know another PR person who is really successfully says I think it's always often I write a press release and give it to someone else before anyone is legitimate skills explaining reached a point where as I first said, I don't think there's a defining characteristic that makes kind of rather lose on price. Some people say good PRs come out of journalism, others say journalists make terrible PRs.
I think I read somewhere that it said that during the recession time, economic crisis, actually PR income per job is actually rising.
I don't feel like there actually is an answer.
It's an interesting
There's an old
insight.
saying that says when
How
disaster
about the
comes, you
income
cry or
that
sell tissues.
the PR industry generate from the
I
services
didn't see
that
my
they offer
income
to the
rise in
clients?
the
Is
financial
that very
crisis,
good
I can tell
income
you that.
right now?
They went
Is it going to
down.
change in the future?
Tragic changes go up. They certainly went down. Go up over the years. Project increases to certain points. Certainly went down as retail budgets got cut. Firms, professional services. There were other side effects of that. I do talk to other people in very undeveloped markets who say the opposite. A lot of publication was down Because at the moment there are so many people trying to say the same thing that they end up basically saying you have to monetize a subscription fee for press releases. We had a situation of the housing application here. I think it's always used to Vietnam. So they turned to PR to increase their own revenues by ad budgets, felt where the best thing to do is undercut. But look, I think the PR industry kind of rather that on price, hanging on price, better than a lot of other industries, and certainly my own experience with the.
I think I read somewhere that it said that during the recession time, the economic crisis, actually PR income per person actually went up.
That doesn't apply to me.
I read somewhere. It's an interesting
choice. Business, we get lose clients. When the disaster comes, there are right issues. And certainly a lot of clients saying to us, I didn't see my income rise. What can I do to rise this much? I kind of like those challenges. No one's ever going to like how tragic it's covered, but I do like the challenge, the number of incoming projects, so what you're actually being circulated to create region, that's always going to come. There were other side effects of that because the advertising budgets got hit very hard. And a lot of publications
you mentioned something about retained accounts. So, is that a thing? Is that a popular thing that you usually do in PR?
Press releases, we had a bit of a situation with that. In PR firms, you normally refuse to do. So they turn to PR to increase their own revenues when ad budgets fell. The first is by project. Look, I think basically industry. I am this company. I can better than this other industry. This time certainly. Doing my own experience with the tougher years of 2008. Maybe I'll come back later. Maybe this is the only thing I ever do in the whole country. Our revenues definitely didn't go up. Maybe I'll become a fact and said their revenues went up. That doesn't apply to me. That's the first type. So just ad hoc project relationships. Kept our retained business. We didn't. The second type of relationship is when we set full service projects. So that basically means you have a lot of clients. A large chunk of money paid every month. That's out of a budget. Agree that across the year we do this much. I kind of like those challenges. No one's ever going to like having their budget. The third challenge of system is across where you're actually being asked where you take a smaller return is always kind of fun. And again, a smaller amount of expected work, but then your other projects are charged separately. So, for example,
you mentioned something about retained accounts. So for this, is that a thing? Is that a popular thing that you usually do in PR?
In a PR firm, normally to recognise the relationship, 3 wages of the standard fee. So if someone just comes to you, actually charge the project worth that basically means if they're on a retainer, I am this company, your project fee is to this firm, this time, you do it and how much. I would always recommend clients to sign a retainer with me, and that's not just for countries, ever for my cash flow. Maybe I would recommend it for a different reason. That's the first type. So just ad hoc project relationship. Has a retained client. The second type of relationship guaranteed the full service for consultant. So that basically means you have a large chunk of money paid every month. What they do, agree that across the year, different language, different acronyms, different vocabulary, dedicate somebody to the third type of system is if you come and go on projects where you take a smaller account, guarantee that. And again, a smaller amount of expected for person A last, but then your other project, I don't know the next step is. So unfortunately, for example, the existing is remove all press conferences on B, which means you have to go for this. You put out one press release, and if you want a press conference, we'll charge you generally or try just for the sake of efficiency. Normally, to recognise the relationship, but we'll reduce the guarantee standard. And so we always sort of recommend if someone just comes to you, catch them, charge them a full fee, just got if they're on a retainer, you reduce mostly project fees to recognise the ability to offer a consistency of service. And I will always recommend clients to sign a retainer with me, and that's not
so
just
usually the clients, the types of clients
I would recommend them for a different reason. That's that
retained accounts.
Have a retained client.
Are they international or local?
I would guarantee them for us international, the person who will learn their business.
So, do you think that other local PR firms are doing the same thing? Do they have different vocabulary as well?
They do. I do occasionally hear something that I find. If you come and go on projects, and occasionally I've seen evidence of what makes it because person A. Occasionally we will have a project come to us and we will say, unfortunately, our person A is busy that week, and so your client, person B, just only have to go back and teach them all the acronyms again. The client will now sit there, I will generally try just for the sake of efficiency to make sure there's and come back and say, impossible. I can't. That is 25%. And so we always sort of recommend people to sign on something of whatever scope works. And I actually don't measure things by percentages of the expenditure to offer a consistent service hours, and that a consultant job gets to know your business better. Does that make sense? If you think
so
about
usually
it,
the clients, the types of clients that
to be paid as a percentage
offer you
of out-of-pocket
retained
expenses.
accounts.
You're actually just incentivizing.
Are they international or local clients?
For us, international, but was willing to do it.
Yeah. So, do you think that other local PR firms are doing the same thing? Do they have retained accounts as well?
They do. I do occasionally hear something that I find a little disturbing. The interesting thing, and last time I have seen evidence discussion makes it disturbing. Again, someone would come to me and say, we will have a project that comes out and only ever pay an agency 15% of their expenses. And I said, well, I'm sorry, the client do it. This only happens locally. What was interesting that happened, the client will sit there, look down. The client then started requesting do a whole bunch of things and come back. So the initial program included initial 25% of this thing, but then we get a phone call saying, hey, we also need you to do this, hey, we also need you to do this, hey, we also need you to do this. I actually don't measure mostly percentages organising different stuff, for example, the number of hours, the projector, but now they want free plasma TVs and they cost more, stuff like that. It's not actually any extra work the other way, but it costs more. When we sat down and paid as a percentage of out-of-pocket expenses, added it up, I said, well, you're actually just incentivizing to waste your money. There's now less than 9% of your expenditure to do it. She kept spending more. Over coffee in a nice coffee shop. If we had done it for a percentage, we're going to the top hotel you can hold because I'm charging a percentage. The other thing that I have seen evidence of, that's the incentive you're given. A couple of different. The interesting thing for last time, when friends have been using discussion, some local PR firms, again, they would come to me and say that a spreadsheet in front of me and say, I only ever pay an agency 15% of their expenses. And I said, well, I'm sorry, then I wouldn't do it. There have been two cases here where what was interesting that happened has been that because the agency's charging, the client then started requesting you watching more things. So instead of something that cost program $20, initial budget included this thing, but then we get a phone 15, hey, we also need you to do this, hey, we also need to do this, hey, total, they get a higher total budget, and it's mostly I've seen this only twice with my own projector, but now they want free plasma TVs, but they cost more, stuff like that. How common it is, it's not actually any extra work, but it costs. One case, when we sat down, it was almost a fun project, it was almost funny, and added it up. A client's table, a friend table, a document that now says like that for an event being done by your expenditure because you kept spending more. And it had we had done a fee, my agency fee with Vietnamese DJ, $650. The other thing that I have seen evidence of, we happened to be sitting with one of a couple of friends who was one of the actually international DJs. When friends have been using some local PR firms and they've sat down and they had a spreadsheet in front of me and said, this is how much the sets. 15 minutes. And the company, I can charge what I like. There have been two cases here where what's just been really obvious has been that because the agency is charging a percent, it also happened to be the table where you go actually own the bar. So instead of something that costs $20, they was $200. It's like because they're getting 15% of $400,000.
Okay.
So they add up the total. It was in my total budget, which makes it hurt. The reason I've seen this only twice. With my own eyes, more out of that than that said I'm a farmer. I look at the DJ actually. I don't know how common it is in this amount. Do we pay the DJ this amount? One case I'll give you it was almost fun on top. It was almost funny.
Right.
So a client table. So when you asked about a friend table that you see a document that was a lot like that for any of that.
So there's markup and there's hour basis.
And we do everything. It had a fee. It's basically anchored to hours. Vietnamese DJ, $650. It always seems to take more hours. We happened to be sitting with one of my good friends who was project for international DJ, a number of hours of time. We said to him, how much would you charge to do that?
So what types of popular services that a PR firm can offer to the client?
So big company, I can charge what I like. Sure. I said, get a regional 50s, maybe 300 people are doing this and they want to be known for it. We also happen to be the tail most common job, but things are hard for you. Most Vietnamese DJ by 20-minute set. He's like, that is very $100,000 staple of our diet. It was in there at $650 US. Other services, the reason? because there are things to go wrong. They're going to tend to get this farm panicking for the DJ actually somebody. They're going to build this, quit now, pay the DJ now, this amount, this is going on, and then take a commission as this amount on top of it. Unfortunately, they have a habit of calling this so after it's. We've stayed away from that. So when you asked about pricing, that's another way that we see here, plan them for what's coming. But I guess
so there's markup and there's hour basis.
So we do everything. A CSR, I keep coming back to in this conversation. It's basically anchored to hours. A lot of it, and developing social media strategies, we spend budget involved in a lot of it. We're not particularly involved in our project fees are based on the number of hours we expect. We are asked a lot to provide counsel.
So what types of popular services that a PR firm can offer to their clients?
Market entry relation because Vietnam is a market entry. So the companies are talking to people doing this kind of trust or doing before for that sort of thing is our most common thing to do that they can ask for most. And to that end, when I meet with clients for the first time, very much I don't go in with a credentials document that says we do crisis management. Other services, when things go wrong, I go in, we tend to get a presentation, hurry, panicking phone call. One of the first things it tells you, helps you to do is pronounce get here now. This is going, that's the number one question I can ask them. How do I pronounce? Unfortunately, they have a habit of calling this the day after it's in the newspaper, instead of doesn't go the day before, and at least plan themselves. The first page of the thing I'll explain to them is how to pronounce. I guess that's just human. How to say these names. A CSR, I keep coming back to this conversation because we are coming in involved. I need to understand it. And developing social media strategies, we seem to be asked to be involved in a lot of it. We're not particularly involved in the part where you go designing web pages so much, but we are asked a lot to provide counsel on how to do it. We're asked pretty regularly on market entry counsel because Vietnam is a market people entry. So the companies are talking to people who they've come to trust or who have been referred to them to talk about what they should do as they come into this market. And look, to that end, when I meet with clients for the first time, I don't go in with a credentials document that says we do crisis management because everyone goes in with that credentials document. I go in with a presentation that one of the first things it tells you, it helps you to do is pronounce Nguyen. That's the number one question I can ask them in Vietnam. How do I pronounce Nguyen? Your name. It doesn't work in English. And so the first page of the thing I'll explain to them is how to pronounce Nguyen, how to say Vietnamese names. Because that's one of the things we're asked for a lot. Companies are coming in, I need to understand more about this market and more about its media.